Welcome to a second workshop for the day. So we have Leo and Ern from Coinbase to talk about the Build On-Chain Apps Toolkit, as well as I think there's going to be some about OnchainKit as well, which is really cool. It's newer. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This has been a long time coming. So all the last partner workshop in this series. So thank you everybody for sticking around as long as you have already. And I won't take up too much of your time, guys. I'll hand it over to you. Let's get started, and I'll just keep an eye out on chat if any questions come up.
All right, sweet. And yeah, a reminder for everyone, if you didn't turn on the camera, feel free to turn it on. So I know that you're here. I still see a few people like with the camera off, so I don't know if you actually are just not really listening to the video. Maybe they're not. Maybe they left. They opened the Google Meet and they left. All right.
Or your soothing voice has lulled them to sleep.
All right, I'm gonna still going to ask question to everyone, so you better hear, because this is gonna be a nice, cozy talk. All right, so we're gonna start with Build On-Chain Apps Toolkit. So what's the goal here? The goal here is mostly just trying to figure out all the tools that we have in the industry. Actually, like this is a new talk, so there is a lot of slides that are incomplete. We're actually preparing this talk for Denver, so this is a good time to talk with you all and just kind of like, that's why I want to kind of like, as we go into the talk, feel free to stop almost at any time, as I kind of like, this is also like a test run for us to understand which parts are not clear, and so we can improve the talk. But long story short, there's a lot of tools, a lot of juggling, a lot of things that overwhelm people, and you probably know this. And I think the goal for us in the last few months was simply to just kind of like answer this question, which is how can we save 6+ weeks of initial on-chain app setup and eliminate the hassle of integrating on-chain components with Web2 infrastructure? And a lot of people have been trying to attempt this, but they kind of like stopped on just like on the initial setup, just kind of like, okay, you have Create React app and you just kind of like do the initial thing, but what if we can do more? And that's the journey we're trying to take. And that's where kind of like BOAT comes in. BOAT is just kind of like a fun name for like Build On-Chain Apps Toolkit. And I want you to kind of actually go to this site right now. I want you to go to this site, especially because, so the link, let me get the link on the comments, so also it's a little bit easier for you to type it. But yeah, I want you to go to this site because some of the slides are probably going to be incomplete, and we're going to kind of like, thank you, Harry. And we're kind of going to go through some of the folder structure and the repo to better understand what's going on. And yeah, we've been working on it for just less than 2 months. So, and the way we're approaching this is we're trying to stay very in tune with the community. So that means like every time someone opens an issue, opens a PR, we're actually trying to understand the question behind the question. Okay, like okay, you want this improvement, tell me more about it. And the reason is because like we don't just want to kind of like solve the superficial problem. We really want to try to understand how to improve the developer experience when starting a new repo, when starting a new web on-chain product. So that's kind of like a call of action for everyone as you might going to use Build in the next few, both in the next few months, and think some stuff feels like, it's kind of okay. Feel free to comment about it. Feel free to open an issue, just like, hey, that thing seems off. Because our goal is to in as much as possible into the community, because we're building the boat both with internal feedback from Coinbase, but also with external feedback from your side. And that's where we are now. I'm Leonardo. I've been working at Coinbase for over 5 years. And today also Arun is going to join us to present part of the talk. Arun, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Arun Sood. I've been Coinbase for about 2 years now, working on the NFT team and then the stablecoin USDC team. So I joined the BOAT team about, I guess, a few weeks ago now, and yeah, looking forward to working with you all on this and kind of showing about BOAT. So I'm one of the core contributors on the team as well, and build some of the experiences.
And you can find us both on Twitter or on WordCast, and let's try it right off. So, Aaron, you want to take us to this part?
Sure. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the setup for BOAT and what we're actually going to be doing. So as Leo was mentioning, one of the key aspects about BOAT is to pull out of a box all the various tools that you're going to need to create a new Web3 application. So a lot of those tools were, the logos were shown in the previous slide. So we have tools like Next.js, tools like Veeam and WAGMI, and Tailwind CSS, and all the different things for the Web3 and the Web2 components. So in order to install and work with BOAT, it's actually pretty simple to do. We do everything through NPX, so we can issue this command here, which is actually going to basically scaffold an entirely new Web3 project for us. So that's kind of step number one in order to create a new project there. Step number two is to create a new wallet on walletconnect.com. And so that we have that new project set up, all the interaction then happens through that project. It's kind of like, your SDK for creating your new application.
So, a quick question. Anyone already give it a try in the last few weeks? If not, that's okay. I'm just going to make you do it now.
Yeah. Okay, how do they get it? Anyone else?
All right, so give me a thumbs up as soon as you run the command. So you can try now, and so you can get a sense on how it works on your machine.
Yes, make sure if you do want to try it to have Node installed and NPX, and then yeah, you can give this command try if you like. We'll talk about the file structure that this creates in just a moment, but we'll give it maybe 2-3 minutes, and then we'll discuss that.
All right, everyone, give me a thumbs up as you are running the command and you see the things installing.
Nice.
All right, love that. And if you don't have an API key for a wallet, it just takes like literally 30 seconds. That's just a dependency that we still need to have because of RainbowKit. We use RainbowKit, and we actually recently migrated to RainbowKit V2, which is pretty dope, which you also use Veeam V2 and WAGMI V2. So when you use both, you always with the guarantee that we're trying to stay with the latest and greatest technology that is like available up there. So let's go to the next one. Aaron?
Cool. Yeah. So if you all had the opportunity to run this command, you'll see a project structure that looks very similar to this. Now, this kind of the reason we brought this up within this talk is to give you a little introduction in terms of what BOAT is, right? So we can see the different files and the project structure that's generated. So let's kind of go through a couple of these pieces that we find pertinent. Of course, there are some more in there too, but so first and foremost, we have the contracts folder. So I didn't expand this in this screenshot that I did here, but we have the contracts folder and a source folder in under that. And that's the source solidity for all of the contracts for the various experiences that we currently have as demos within BOAT right now. So right now, we basically have two main experiences that we're demoing through BOAT. We have the Buy Me a Coffee flow. So if you end up launching the app and you want to try that out, the Buy Me a Coffee flow is basically a demo of purchasing with crypto. So it gives you the opportunity to buy something in a certain number of something. So it gives you that demo. And the second contract that we have available is to mint an NFT. So we have the ERC 721 mint flow through this platform as well. So you can see that too. Second call out here is we have the main source directory, and we have a couple of different folders in there as well. So we have components. Those are some common components you're likely to see in any Web 2 application. Your typical banners and headers and buttons and that type of thing. The next one down there is called the contract folder. This is a very, very interesting one. This is more Web 3 related. This is where all of your contract ABIs are going to be stored. Now, ABIs are basically just files that have details and information about the contract, as well as some of those typings for when we interact with them within our Web 2 code and connect that with WAGMI, which we'll show you shortly as well. Next up, we have hooks. We have a few helper hooks to do some of the Web 3 work with WAGMI and whatnot, but also some Web 2 items as well. And last but not least, I wanted to talk about with our structure is the page components. So these are all of our different React application components that we wrap into BOAT for the various experiences. So Buy Me a Coffee and Mint NFT right now.
Yeah, something to point out is, again, because we're trying to stay up to date with the latest version of every library, we recently migrated from the page routing to the app routing of Next.js. That might confuse people, especially because page routing wrote the history on Next.js for a very long time. So if you see at the way top, you will see a folder called app. The app is where Next has the app routing. So every file is a route. Either it's an API route or it's just like a normal page web route. So for now, we have this folder called page components where actually all the components for that page lives. We're not in love with this file structure, so actually that's kind of like, as you're playing around with BOAT, we would love to hear your thoughts on like what you like, what you don't like about this structure, especially because like one thing that we're trying to do with BOAT is keep things clean. Very like, ideally, you're going to take BOAT and you're going to do whatever you want with it, which is great. But we want to make sure that when you start, there is a separation of concern between what each part does. Yeah, it's going next. I guess a quick question to everyone. Raise of hand. Anyone? I guess the first question is: have you ever used Next? Plus one on that. Raise of hand. Some color. All right. I'm getting there.
Nice.
How many of you use the latest one, which is the app routing? That's it. All right. We got a couple. Third, someone crying for it. I feel you.
Oh,
all right.
Nice.
Let's go to the next slide.
Cool, everyone. So yeah, we had an opportunity to talk about that. Yeah, you'll notice a few things. I mean, you'll notice that BOAT is opinionated in some things. Even Next.js in and of itself, that's an opinionated choice. However, as Leo mentioned, there are some choices that obviously the team is very open to discussing as well. So if you have thoughts, definitely let us know. So the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about here is Solidity contracts. So this function, for example, is one in which I pulled from our Buy Me a Coffee flow. And this is one of our, this is the main function for our Solidity contract for the Buy Me a Coffee purchase flow. And just kind of wanted to bring up that we do have these two contracts built into BOAT for both of those types of flows. And we're just going to expand that out as BOAT is able to handle more use cases. So how many of you have worked with Solidity before? How many of you have had the opportunity to code with it before? Have some of you done some work? Okay. All right. Quite a few of you. Nice.
I feel like this class probably 100%.
Probably. Yeah. Nice. Well, then you probably have more experience than I do. Thankfully, I'm not the one writing these contracts, so don't worry. But yes, I had the opportunity to learn a little bit about this a little bit more as well. But Leo, do you have any particular notes about this specific contract that you wanted to mention?
No, I think like the main reason we're showing it because we want to show you from the method Buy Coffee how we treat across the rest of the app. So we go for Buy Coffee here to go to the next one.
Yep. Cool. Yeah. So as we were discussing, one of the main components, one of the main toolkits that we wrap into BOAT is WAGMI. So WAGMI gives us the opportunity to have that interface between the Web 2 and the Web 3 type components and functionality. So here's an example piece of code that I pulled from form by coffee.tsx. So this is one of our page components within our React application for the Buy Me a Coffee flow. And we'll see that we can actually pull in some hooks from WAGMI that we then ended up using. So as you can see here, we're importing useSimulate contract from WAGMI. And then we're using it down below in order to begin the purchase flow for this Buy Me a Coffee flow. So we have the address of where we're sending it, the contract API, as we discussed before, the function name that you saw previously on the Solidity code, the arguments that we're passing to that contract, the method within the contract, the query itself, and the value we're sending along for that purchase. So like I said, this will be on the React side, and we're doing this all through WAGMI in order to call these contract methods. Cool, so just like we saw on the right side just a moment ago, we also have reads built in with using, once again, WAGMI. So here's an example, a little bit of example code here using on the read side. We have a couple of imports for use read contract. We're pulling that directly from WAGMI. And we have the contract API that we're pulling from that contracts folder. And notice a couple of things here. So we have the address of the contract address. We have the API once again and the function name. So this allows us to read from the contract, grab those data, and then we have examples within BOAT in order to use those data and apply them in the React application for presentation purposes.
And to give you some context, let me, because I know that most of you probably are pretty expert with WAGMI, I want to mostly kind of showcase how things are organized. So going back a little bit on the GitHub repo that I said we're going to mention, the repo has the template folder, which you cannot see okay, yeah, you can see it. There's this template folder, which is the one that gets created. It's the one that is being used when you do npx. So here is where there is the meat. So when you go to, we're trying, for example, feedback we got recently was keep it clean, where there is the Solidity part from one side and the Next.js part from one side. So we have contracts and web. When you are inside web, I think something that is interesting is your API, as was mentioned, is inside this contract folder. So that's where we get the API generated. But then more interesting, in the hooks folder, there is this thing called contracts.ts. Now, this is kind of where the magic happens. There's more to improve here, but long story short, what we do is we take all these APIs, and then we use this kind of generate contract hook that we created for each contract. So for this case, we say, hey, for the Buy Me Coffee, here is the API, and this is the contract that is being deployed either on base Sepolia or base mainnet or any other issue that you want to work on. So again, this is not rocket science. You probably already did this in a way or another, but what we're trying to do is how can we simplify the developer flow so it gets easier and easier. So pay attention to this one, used by a coffee contract. And then we reopen the slides. Where is it? Here we go. And then you can see there, from contracts was called use Buy Me a Coffee contract. And we ran that function, which created the contract, which add the information that WAGMI is passing to us with the status and the API and so on. So that's something to kind of just some sugar that we had it here in BOAT. And we're going to keep refining that. One thing that we want to refine is we know that WAGMI has some cool CLI to automatically generate kind of hooks. So that's something that we want to integrate as well. Why did you choose the CLI over GitHub templates? That's a great question. Actually, that's something it's an open question for me. Honestly, I debating if we should use GitHub templates over CLI. Actually, I'm curious. What do you see the trade-off with templates or not? Yeah, yes. What do you think? Do you like templates more?
I think templates is a a slightly easier way for someone to start, because you can just click a button and it clones it to your own GitHub profile. Then you can just clone it down to your local computer and just install packages. Um, but for a power user, maybe a CLI is better, because power user, they are more inclined to use CLI for most of the things,
There is
and running a
two.
command.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think there is two paths that we want to explore. I think it's less about power user or not. I mean, I will use a template too. But I think it's more like on a template, you first create the repo, you pull things, and then you install them. Where the CLI instead is the opposite. You install everything first, and then you create the repo. So I think they do two steps, but in two different timing. I think like we need to support both, honestly, and just say like if you either can create the template and just kind of like do that, or if you want to do from your, or if you already have a repo, that's another point. If you already have a repo and you want to do from the CLI point of view, that's a way. So I think that's something that we need to polish. But yeah, thank you. Great call out. Any other question? Or curiosity or like thoughts? Okay. Yeah, I mean, the CLI is interesting because like a Coinbase internally, it's a little bit trickier generating repos internally, because every time you generate a repo, there is some permission you have to ask. So sometimes people just like have a repo and maybe they have like multiple projects inside the repo. So the CLI comes handy when you have multiple projects. But I think if you're learning or if you're trying to spin off something that is kind of like public, I think the template actually might be even easier. So they're both right. I think they have different type of like experience. All right, let's go next.
Cool. Sounds good. So yeah, last thing I wanted to bring up with our with BOAT is the React application with Next and Tailwind CSS. So one thing to note, and just kind of bring in some more tools that we use within BOAT. So it's all built with React with Next, and we do all of our styling through Tailwind CSS. So all of the various classes, the helper classes, we've combined them together to basically create our UI components. Here's just an example I pulled from the code for the buy me a coffee flow, in which we're then we read from the contract into this variable called memos, and we're applying this into our React code to then iterate over that and display it through, like I said, Tailwind styling. So
yeah, let me also show you something like why, for example, we use Tailwind. I'm gonna open Figma. How many of you ever use Figma? Just quick raise of hands. Have you ever used it? All right. We got a few people loving Figma. If you didn't, honestly, it's one of the greatest inventions ever done in the world. For someone that used to use Photoshop and fireworks, Figma really, really, really good. Let me show you a little bit actually how this is more like a trick I want to share. So this is like the Figma file that we have for boats. So if I go to, can you see it? Yes, you can. Perfect. This is kind of like a lot of the things we're working on. So if I click on the top right, there's this button called Dev Mode. When I click Dev Mode, then there are different plugins, and there is one plugin I really like, which is Figma to Code. So when I click this, and I click any part of the application, it will actually generate the code for you. Even better, it will generate it specific for Tailwind with all the different flavor that you want. And you can go even smaller, just one location, maybe a few locations, maybe like the entire block. So I think the reason a lot of the thinking that let me stop sharing, a lot of the thinking that we have when building BOAT is less about, oh, let's craft something unique, but more like, what are all the ingredients people already use in the industry? And let's create a recipe that works really well with these ingredients. So we know that Tailwind works very well with Figma. We know that Tailwind works very well with Next.js and with the CLSX, which is a Qt tool to organize Figma, to organize Tailwind. Something that we do for you, we also like have all the different linting and pre-tier for Tailwind and everything on all the code on board. So if you're someone like me that likes to code to be neat, automatically you can run the command and just keeps everything clean. All right, going back to the slide. We're getting to the OnchainKit section. OnchainKit is very fresh, it's very new, it's less than 3 weeks old. The idea was BOAT was just the beginning, where we were trying to do the scaffolding and kind of like save you 6 weeks. But there is another part of the story, which is like, hey, Leo, we actually already have an application. We don't need another one. What we need is libraries that help us to do things easier in the application we already have. And that's what OnchainKit is trying to do. OnchainKit is trying to kind of like cover part of the issues, or kind of like trying to be a collection of utilities that you can use in your Web3 product. To give you like a little bit of history recap, if you think about it, in 2006, when JavaScript kind of like became more popular, people still didn't like coding in JavaScript. It was very common for people, even at Google and other companies, to actually use Java and transpile Java into JavaScript, because they hate JavaScript so much, they would rather code with Java. So what happened was library like jQuery actually normalized JavaScript and make it easier to use. And you will see that a lot of the method that jQuery created, or even the library created, became part of JavaScript. So it was kind of like how a library pushed the limits of the language, and then the language became better because it gets closer to a library. A little bit like why we have now with JavaScript like anonymous function, but they were first created by CoffeeScript. At least a form of that, way back, I think, in 2010. But going back to our story, jQuery simplified the use of JavaScript, and Bootstrap simplified the use of jQuery by making sure that you have all these components that you can build great products very quickly. And fun fact, Coinbase, the first prototype of Coinbase was actually built with Bootstrap. And that's the beauty. We're like, what about Web3? So Web3, with DeFi Summer 2020, things got very, a lot of people, me included, were like, oh, let's do more Solidity. Let's try to build more on-chain, like decentralized application, which now we call them on-chain. But it was still hard. It was still hard to connect with it, like interface with Ethereum. And I think WAGMI really did a great job in simplifying that interface. But even better, Veeam, I think, is just crushing it. It's just doing so well in making it easier to interface with Ethereum. So then the question is, if WAGMI and Veeam are happy to interface with Ethereum, where is the bootstrap that we all need? That's what we're trying to build. That's what we're trying to build with OnchainKit, which is we're trying to build a collection of components and utilities that depend from Veeam that you can easily kind of like shape your product. So the library is, the repo is OnchainKit. It's very new. Again, similar story. Feel free to show your love with some GitHub start, open some issue, open some PR, or just kind of like, tell us what you think over Twitter. Our goal is to stay connected with you, with the community, because we're trying to live in this world very similar to BOAT, where we use actually OnchainKit already internally at Coinbase. We already have like 4 products internally that already integrated with OnchainKit. So that's really good for us because we can test on real product that millions of people actually use, how OnchainKit behaves. But also we want to kind of like hear from you to kind of like keep it easier and simple to adopt. Let me share the link of OnchainKit, or if anyone has the link, you don't mind share it. Oh, funny. Can you transpile Java to JS? I've seen everything transpile to JS, which is kind of like crazy. Okay, so the link of OnchainKit is this one. All right. So right now, most OnchainKit is 2 things. There is the frame component and identity part. The identity part we're still polishing. But let me talk about frames. There is this thing called frame frames coming from Farcaster, which are really fun. If you don't have a WordCast account, I would say try to create it now. It's kind of like, if you are passionate about like building a chain product and you want to kind of like get very quickly adoption of your product, Frames is a great way to get like, you created the app, you created an on-chain application, and you're trying to get user, and you struggle to get even like 100 people on it. Because, maybe your Twitter is not popular or whatever. But then on Frames, you create a frame that is still an on-chain application, and you get like 10,000 people clicking and using in just a day. I think that's the power of like why we want to talk about frames. It's the power of distribution, but still doing things with it on-chain. So in the end, what is a frame? Frame is just lets you turn any cast, a cast is just a fancy word to say tweet, into an interactive application. If you go to this link, which can I click it? Here we go. So if you go to this link, and which is this one, let me show it to you. This is a kind of like a replica of the advertising that was done on a Super Bowl. What was it, 2 years ago? Something like that, from Coinbase. And the way it works is like, this is just kind of like a small video game. You just click it, and you're trying to hope until it hits the corner. If you keep clicking, eventually it will end up to the corner, and when you end up to the corner, you can actually mint something, which is pretty dope. But let's go back to understand. So this is the frame. It's a quick way to interface your application to WordCast. Here we go. When a frame, if you think about it, it's very similar to what like Twitter or Facebook did with the Open Graph, where you have a static image and you have a static info. The frame just extends that. And they're like, sure, you have an image, but it can change based on what people click. And also you can have other information on it. So it extends to the graph, and it's trying to give more dynamic actions to it. And okay, where should we even start? I think the first thing to start is there is this repo, which actually this one is super easy you have to just kind of like fork it. And if you fork it, then it's literally one step. Let me show it to you. Like if you take this repo, oh, you want to see the open issues? Yeah, I can show you that later for BOAT and OnchainKit. If you kind of like take this repo, which is a frame in 100 lines, and you fork it, you can create your own frame. Then you deploy it very quickly to Vercel, and you can test it with this other link, which is developer frames. And you literally have a frame in less than 5 minutes. Dope. And then you can customize it. You can have more fun with it. But in practice, what you need to do is just create some meta tags. The meta tags, which one at the bottom, on the bottom, it's what you need for a web page to be used as a frame. And we OnchainKit has some cute utility to make sure that it's kind of like type safe, and we kind of like guide you on how to create a frame. So if you want a button, the image, and then the post URL. The post URL is pretty much where you want the frame to interact with. Because the frame starts by you creating a web page, taking that link and post it on WordCast. And that magically becomes a frame. And then when you click a button, you're telling with the post URL where the API is going. What is the API that it kind of like has to do the next step? And what is interesting, this is from the API perspective. So this is the get response of the API that you're trying to communicate to. And what you're doing is, first of all, you want to kind of like, you're getting a bunch of information from Farcaster. So you're taking that information from the body of the request, and you pass it into get frame message. In get frame message, it will tell you two things. Both if the message is valid. The beauty of Farcaster is like, it gives you a signature that you can validate. so you can make sure that actually the someone eating your API is truly from Farcaster versus like a bot that is just trying to spam your API. And then if it's valid, you can use the message with a lot of information. Like you can access the Ethereum address account of the person that clicked the button, or you access all the information like if you type an input, what button they clicked. And that's very powerful because think about it. Someone from a social network clicks a button, you know the Ethereum address. With the Ethereum address, now you can make other calls like, oh, I want to see the latest NFT that this person minted or whatever. And you can go in different directions. You can use Frame to build video games. You can use Frame for on-chain experience. You can use Frame for e-commerce experience. And that can be done in just a few pages. And going back to like, so we're seeing an API response. And if in the end of the API response, then the API will return an HTML. So in the end, it's all an HTML going back and forward. And we have this other utility called getFrame HTML response that is simplify how to generate the HTML needed from Farcaster to understand your response. So you can say, okay, the next frame is going to have this button, it's going to have this image, it's going to have this other API, and so on. To recap, frame in the end to work are very simple. You just have to give them an image. That's it. Those are the required properties. Just an image is enough. But then there is other options that are very powerful, like you can create until 4 buttons, you can tell where the API to communicate to, you can have different type of actions, you can add an input text, and the Farcaster team is working on adding more and more options, which is, again, it gets things pretty interactive. And to recap, those are the 4 links, which I'm going to actually try to very quickly copy and paste to you to here. And that's it for the slide. And I'm happy to take more questions. But like to recap a little bit, build Onchain apps is how you start an application. But if you already have an application, OnchainKit is a great library to support your application. If you want to start a frame, the repo, a frame and lines, it just works in less than a minute. And then you can test your frame. Oh, if you want to chat with us, we actually have a channel called OnchainKit on Warcast. Yeah, okay, going back to the question. You were talking about open issue for BOAT and OnchainKit. Let's see what we got of open issue. So both things get pretty interactive on issues because we're coding so fast. So some issues, they don't last long, honestly. But Adul is doing a great job to kind of like creating a lot of like random issue. Then you can either code to it or you can just be curious about it. And the same story with like OnchainKit. Or actually, OnchainKit is a little bit more challenging to work on because the quality of bar from OnchainKit is like 10 times higher because we're trying to build good API that everyone can use. But we also welcome, like, the way we say it is, don't feel pressure that you have to work on an issue to contribute. Even just kind of like complaining about something for us is very helpful. Like, for example, like we recently had an issue where someone said, where was he? Spencer. Oh yeah. Spencer was like, hey, by the way, I would love that your folder structure would look like this. And I was like, yeah, you're damn right. And then we opened an API and we did it. So even this for us means a lot. Like, come with your opinion, and then we can code it. Because in the end, open source is not just about you have to code everything, but just even share your opinion. That's very powerful. All right. Any other question or curiosity? I'm here for the next few minutes.
So I was wondering, like, apart from Farcaster frames, what do you think is going to be added to OnchainKit over time? I know you guys like started with frames because the timing was very nice, but
Yeah,
what
I
are you
think
guys thinking about?
frame identities is the next one that we're polishing. Also, you can actually can get an exposure to the pull request. So we're working right now on Ethereum attestation. So we actually have some cool pull requests of how to simplify the use of Ethereum attestation through either a component, which is a badge, or just some utilities. So that's one thing we're working on. Another thing we're working on is how to do XMTP validation, which is, if you don't know XMTP, it's just a nice way to, it's actually the protocol that is used for behind Coinbase Wallet chats, which is an open protocol. Everyone can use it. But it's pretty powerful because we want to simplify how to create your own chats or integrate with chats through OnchainKit. So I think other things we want to work on, and there's a long list of ideas, but for sure, like simplifying how to do bridging, simplifying how to do NFT media. There are a few things that are kind of like obvious, like of course NFT media, but other things like that are more like new, like Ethereum attestation, which are relatively new, new-ish. I mean, and been in theory for a long time, but more recently have been adopted, that we want to simplify even more. Or another thing, like what we want to simplify, for example, we recently opened a PR that we actually read the documentation on recently. Didn't publish the documentation yet, but is it's gonna be about, I cannot find it right now, but it's gonna be about how to, if you have a FID, a Farcaster ID, how you can get an ATM address. So there is also a point of view from us of, depending on the different major player on chain, how can we make it easier to interact with those players? But yeah, if anyone is kind of like, hey Leo, I would love OnchainKit to simplify my life for this, just for an issue. Our roadmap is we're very flexible.
Perfect. Okay. And this kind of a follow-up to something you said. So you said, for example, looking to simplify bridging. I'm not sure how relevant this is, but like it's kind of like, is there a quote unquote Coinbase bias towards which bridging protocols, for example, you might add support for?
I think the answer there is like OnchainKit wants to take an approach where, for simplicity, we might gonna default on a particular contract. But the reality is, OnchainKit also want to always be flexible. So then you're like, the reality is like, hey, this is a cool UI that you can use with this contract, and it's built for you. But you can take this UI and just put a different contract. And I think that's kind of like the approach we want to take, where like the default, making the default stupid easy, but then easy and safe, of course. But then we want people to customize. Something powerful people forget: the reason Bootstrap became so popular was not because it was a great component library, but was also very flexible. Bootstrap back in 2010 was very common that if you get a library, you have to get everything from the library. You have to get the CSS, you have to get the JavaScript, you have to get like you have to buy in completely. What Bootstrap did in 2010, they said, you want only the CSS? Here, just use the CSS. You want only the JavaScript? Here, just use only the JavaScript. You want them combined? Here. And I think that's also the approach we want to take. It's like, you want just the JavaScript? Here. You want just the components? Here. You want just kind of like components plus maybe smart contracts or API? Here. And that's because we believe that to enable more product to be built on chain, we need to give folks something stable, reliable, but also give them choice, the choice to customize it as they prefer.
Absolutely, that makes sense. I love that approach. I think there's a lot of, also opens up sort of a lot of pathways for people to start contributing to this in ways of like adding support for their favorite protocols or their favorite things, you know. So that's cool. Also, I'm so sorry if you hear my dog snoring in the background. He's pretty
No,
loud.
I love dogs. That's great. That's a good.
Okay. Any other questions, anyone? Otherwise, we're slightly over time. So if there's any more questions, we'll probably take a few more, or we'll shortly start wrapping up otherwise.
Let's see. There are only a few people left, but I appreciate everyone for coming. Honestly, this is also a good practice round for me and Arun, because like we are actually representing this talk more next week and in Denver and also in other cities. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate this. It's a good opportunity for us to polish this presentation, which my opinion is it's okay. It can be better, but thank you for like stick with us for like 45 minutes.
Absolutely, 100%. Perfect. So I noticed a couple of people here joined sort of midway, a little bit late. So this was recorded. It will be on the YouTube shortly, so you'll be able to find it over there as well if you missed anything. Other than that, I think we'll start wrapping up. If folks, actually, last thing, since you are not on our Discord, if people have follow-up questions, where should they reach out to you guys?
Easier way, just honestly, either Farcaster or Twitter. You can use my last name, which is Zizzamia, and you can find me pretty much everywhere. So yeah, the DMs are open, so feel free to DM me if you don't want to write a public post. Yeah, I'll just open also an issue. I'm the first responder on most of them.
Perfect. Love that. Okay. So with that, I think we'll start wrapping up. Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Aaron, for coming. Thank you, everybody in the audience, for staying. And this actually wraps up our workshop series. So we shall see you guys on Monday now for the ceremonies, and then Wednesday, make sure to get all your submissions in before Wednesday. And yeah, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day or night or wherever you are. And cheers.
Thanks, all.
See you around.